the south, and the focus later Wednesday is on southeast England for those thunderstorms. Thursday and Friday look drier and brighter.
Tonight on GB News, at 6 it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. And it's all right if you're an MP these days, isn't it? You're off on your holidays. How I envy them. But one man is back and he's got a plan, Keir Starmer. He's today been sharing the energy plan that's apparently going to fix all of our energy woes. It includes a variety of things, freezing the price caps, more windfall tax on these companies, and so on and so forth. He wants to look at tax breaks and a few other bits. Have you seen it? Are you inspired by this? Is this the opposition returned? You tell me. I want your thoughts on that tonight. And also, get this, can you believe it's a year on from that, let's put it mildly, chaotic removal of ourselves from Afghanistan now. The former head of the British Army says that we need to send more money to help people in Afghanistan. Do we? And you might have noticed, you might have heard it being discussed, the migrants. The number of them now that have crossed the channel has passed 20,000 this year. I mean, come on, doesn't even really matter what side of the fence you sit on. We must all surely accept that this cannot go on. But what then? What is the answer? I mean, it's turned into a bit of a joke now, hasn't it? You can go on social media and get discounted tickets almost now to the UK. We surely are a laughingstock. So what is the answer? We'll have all of that to come and more, but first, let's bring ourselves up with tonight's latest headlines.
I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Labour leader has laid out his party's answer to soaring living costs, a £29 billion plan to freeze energy bills for 6 months, paid for in part by a windfall tax on the profits of oil and gas companies. Sir Keir Starmer says families wouldn't have to pay a penny more than their current energy bills over the winter. Labour claims the measures would reduce inflation by up to 4%, but the Institute of Fiscal Studies disagrees, calling the plans an illusion. Sir Keir says Labour's solution to soaring costs is the opposite to what the government's providing.
I think in a national emergency like this, where we've got so many families anxious about paying the bills, it's right politically that we say every penny should go to reducing those bills, not to compensating shareholders. What I wanted to make sure was that today we could put a fully costed, credible plan on the table, which actually answers the question, what will you do to help so many struggling households this winter?
Britain has become the first country to approve a COVID vaccine that targets both the Omicron and the original strain of the virus. The government says the upgraded Moderna vaccine has been carefully reviewed by its scientific advisory body. It's not yet clear who will be offered the booster or when. But Health Secretary Steve Barclay says the jab will help protect communities.
It's a hugely positive step. The UK is the first place to licence this through the MHRA. It means that UK patients will have access to the broader immunity that the bivalent vaccine offers. So it's an exciting potential and it's good news for the UK population.
Heathrow Airport has announced it will extend its cap on passenger numbers until the end of the summer. The airport says a daily limit of 100,000 departing travellers will now apply until October the 29th. Heathrow says the cap could be lifted earlier, though, if it can improve its current labour shortage. The Metropolitan Police are investigating a fatal stabbing in central London this morning. Police say a man died just after midday in Soho, a busy area known for its shopping and nightlife. A man has been arrested in connection with the attack. A water park where an 11-year-old girl died just over a week ago has been suspended from reopening. Windsor and Maidenhead councillors say Liquid Leisure must show it's reduced any risk of drowning before business can resume. The girl was reported missing at the park on the 6th of August and found just after 5 p.m. She later died in hospital. Thames Valley Police say her death is being treated as unexplained but not suspicious. Today marks 1 year since the Taliban took over Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. Citizens are encouraged to celebrate with a national holiday declared in the country. The Taliban took control of the city last year amid a mass evacuation of US forces and refugees. Humanitarian aid has been cut significantly since the takeover, as world leaders demand greater rights for Afghans, particularly women and girls. Defence commentator Jamil Jafar told GB News he's concerned about terrorist groups reforming in Afghanistan.
An important day for the U.S. to mark the end of that military operation. At the same time, very challenging day because of the people that were left behind and our allies that were left behind, and that we continue to try to get out of that country. And of course, the concern that the Taliban will permit Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups to reform there in Afghanistan remains a significant concern with the recent killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri there in Kabul itself.
A complaint has been made to the police watchdog after athlete Ricardo dos Santos was stopped and searched for a second time in London. The Olympic sprinter was pulled over early yesterday morning. He filmed some of the encounter. The Met Police says its officers thought he was using his phone whilst driving. Well, previously, dos Santos had accused police of racially profiling him and his partner when he was stopped 2 years ago. 5 officers are currently facing disciplinary hearings for that incident in 2020. And the Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning of heavy rain and thunderstorms for most of the UK. The downpours could cause disruption to transport, power cuts and flash flooding. The 2-day alert begins today and will stay in place for southern England until Wednesday. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. We've got my panel, the writer and broadcaster Dominic Samuels and Jeevan Sander, who's an economist at King's College London. And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co by now, don't you? It's not just about us three, it's about you at home as well. I want to know what's on your mind tonight, and specifically, what do you think about the topics we are going to get into? Labour, they've got an energy plan. Do you agree with it? Do you like it? Do you think it's even relevant? You tell me. I also want to talk to you about a year on from Afghanistan. Should the UK be sending more money? And over 20,000 people across the channel. I mean, goodness gracious me. We go around in circles on this all the time. Let's face it, no one really seems to be doing anything about it. I mean, now it's a joke, isn't it? People are advertising on TikTok. I mean, I have to laugh. It is that absurd. If only it wasn't, of course, so serious. Get in touch with me. Let me know all your thoughts on those topics. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. You can tweet me at gbnews or at Michelle Dewbs. Let's get stuck into our top story there tonight. Not bad being an MP at the moment. You get your summer off, don't you? But Keir Starmer, he's back from his holiday. He's got a plan. He's got an energy price cap. That's what he wants to be frozen, he reckons. He could save the average household £1,000. Got to say, this is quite a big intervention by Sir Keir Starmer, and many are saying that it's put pressure on Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak to say what they would do. I mean, got to say, they've been saying what they would do, but many people are saying it's not enough. So, before we get into it then, let's have a little reminder as to what it is that Labour are proposing. The Ofgem price cap, which is currently £1,971, of course, is expected to rise again in October and then again in January, but under Labour's plan, it will be frozen until the end of next March. This is expected to cost £29 billion, and this money would be given to energy firms by the government. Labour would be ditching the £400 discount that's been given to all the households between October and March, and this would be funding about half the cost of the plan. Labour also would backdate the Windfall tax, which took effect in May, back to January. What do you think to that? Many of you are already getting in touch saying, what's it got to do with them? They're not in power, so it's all irrelevant. But, I mean, give them their due. They've got to be kind of challenging the government on some of this, trying to set some direction, put some pressure on, and many Tory voters, actually, have come out in support of this plan. So credit where it's due, because people do criticise the opposition for not actually being that effective in opposition, and today they're trying. Jeevan Sander, where do you stand?
Well, yeah, I think it's absolutely the right thing for them to do. Their job is not just to oppose the government, but now set out what they would do in power. And look, this energy bill rise we're about to see, it's more than a crisis, it'll be catastrophic. We're facing an increased energy bill over £2,000. That's going to send middle-class families to the wall, let alone those at the bottom who face destitution and starvation. It is, of course, a fully costed plan. It will get them through this very difficult winter. And as you've said, 3/4 of the public and 3/4 of Conservative voters support it. So it's very clear the public is behind this, and once again we're now waiting for the Conservative Party to catch up.
But the public's going to be behind anything which reduces their bill. It doesn't necessarily make it the right policy, does it? I was reading your blog earlier on. I found it quite interesting. You were saying that this potentially could be used as a lever. What do you call it? A fiscal price cap? Did I make my notes? Yes. You were saying that it actually might be used as a lever to try and get a handle on inflation. Can you explain that to my viewers that are not as up there with the economics as you?
Yes, of course. So look, what will happen is if the Labour Party was to fix the energy price cap as it is now, it would lower inflation by about 4 percentage points. Because of that cost, that price won't rise over the winter. And when that happens, it also means that inflation won't get out of control. We'll end up in what's called a wage price spiral, which is where people don't know how much prices are going to increase, so they keep ending up or asking for higher wages. That leads to higher price rises, and it keeps going on and on and on. And of course, people then can't really interact in the economy. They don't know what prices to set. The price signals get very messed up, and then economic growth begins to fall. That's what we really saw in the 1970s. Now, it's not clear if we are there yet, but what it is clear is if you do directly reduce inflation, you're minimising that risk of that happening. You're minimising the chance of inflation becoming embedded in the economy. We can get a temporary feature and then get through to next year.
But one of the challenges for me with this, because this price cap, the reason it keeps going up and up and up, many people are saying, well, if it's a cap, why does it keep moving? Because it's reflecting the cost of the wholesale gas. It's that goes up and up and up, and that is then passed on. If you fix this, aren't you worried that you might push more suppliers into going under, like what we saw previously?
So the supplier will still get the price in between the difference of what the current price cap is and what the wholesale price would be. So they shouldn't go more bust, if you like. They should stay alive and afloat. And the real thing is two things, really, is yes, put inflation down, yes, ensure that families get through this winter, but also buy us a year. So we think energy prices might begin to fall anyway, but of course that's very unclear. But also time times to ensure that bills can go down for households as well. We can retrofit homes, we can insulate homes. You know, that's something that can get our bills down. And regardless of where you stand in this debate, I think we could all agree lower energy bills are better for everybody.
Yeah, of course, and that's the point I was trying to make, Dominique. When we say, oh yeah, loads of the Tory voters and the people at large are backing this plan, well, of course they are. You know, people are going to back anything, that saves the money. Why wouldn't they? So I'm not sure if it's necessarily that this plan is the answer or if people are just desperate for anything.
Yeah, I completely understand that. And look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm some expert in economics, but what I do understand is politically the Conservatives are in a very difficult stance at the moment because neither Rishi Sunak nor Liz Truss seem to be putting forward a plan that sounds radical enough to actually offset the rises that we're going to see. From January, bills are projected to hit £4,200. That is simply unsustainable, and neither of their plans so much as covers that. It barely covers it. People want a solution, and at the moment we've got a solution that's being presented by Labour that actually will see people paying less for their energy bills. And to be honest, I think it does make sense. I think it might buy us some time to actually get inflation under control. And the fact that some Tories actually back this, for example, even Esther McVey has said that this does sound like the most sensible option and actually an alternative that will address the problem rather than tinkering around, which I'm sorry is what Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak is doing. You know, I've not heard a better alternative, so...
See, Jeevan, I'm a business person at heart, and I've got to say, one of the things that worries me, because I don't want anyone to struggle with their energy bills, I really don't. But when it comes to kind of interfering in the market, I'm starting to get slightly nervous because everyone talks now about the situation in Russia and Ukraine, and that's what's driving prices up. But let's be absolutely clear that lots of this started in terms of energy increases because of governments manipulating the economy to such a point where they shut it down. It was that interference, when we started then opening up, that supply-demand kicked in, and that led to the initial surges that we saw in gas. So that makes me worried about interventions, point one. Point two, I sit there and I think fixing energy cap, fine. What about when that ends? What do we do then? Because this war in Ukraine, everyone knows about it because it's been talked about since February. But February was an escalation into a conflict that's been ongoing since 2014. So I'm not so sure that this is going to be ending anytime soon. And then my last point as a business person is talking about these kind of windfall taxes and all the rest of it. And now we're going to kind of backdate it. It feels to me that you're almost doing this. I mean, you can't see what I'm doing, actually, if you're on the radio. I've just realised that. But just sticking your finger in the air and going, right, this is my policy today. And guess what, everyone? I'm going to backdate it as well. Surely you're going to de-incentivise investment in, I don't know, renewables and whatever else.
So on the first point of interventions, I mean, look, we already know how high energy
I feel better
prices...
for getting all that off my chest, I can tell you. Go on, sorry.
The first interventions, like in terms of interfering with energy prices, we've already been cutting back on our heating bills. We've already felt it last winter. We know that 40% of us are already struggling to heating their homes. So the price signal in that sense won't do a huge amount. We know people are already reducing it as much as they possibly can. What we're trying to do is to stop destitution over the next year. I would agree, by the way, in terms of what happens over the next year, and it is important the government, if they do implement this, or if it was a Labour Party, they spent that year trying to ensure that bills would be lower irrespective of where the gas price ends up, not just hitting and hoping, as it were, to see where it is.
And I think it can't just be this policy because there are other wider issues. For example, the fact that we're not producing gas domestically. Last year we imported more than we actually produced. That's
no,
a massive problem.
we do create gas domestically, but then we have to send a lot of that overseas. You're quite right that we import more now than what we create here.
From Norway,
but one of the challenges, and this is why a lot of these politicians make me laugh, all of them, quite frankly, because you've got Ed Davey coming out talking about price caps. Well, actually, he contributed to a lot of the problems back in, I think it's 2013, when he was messing around in terms of the storage facilities. He wouldn't subsidise storage facilities, so we don't have a lot of storage now for things like gas. You've got Labour now coming out today with all of these kind of plans, when actually they'd have had their way, we would have been locked down for an awful lot longer. So we probably would have found ourselves in even more conundrums when it comes to the supply, the demand side of things. So I've had enough of all of them, which I realise is not very helpful because it doesn't actually answer the problem as to what we're going to do with our energy. I interrupted you, Dominic. What was you saying?
Yeah, just the wider problems in terms of making sure that we're self-sufficient instead of sort of being victim to global price shocks, which is obviously what we're seeing right now. And also, you probably won't agree with this, Juven, but I think about how much we've actually used taxpayers' money to subsidise renewable energy. About 265 million in 2021 is the most recent figure. And despite this, yes, renewable energy is at its lowest it's ever been, the consumer is actually not seeing the benefit of that. And I think a lot of people are going to be asking questions. Why is taxpayers' money going towards renewables for these companies? Because that's the sort of intervention that we've seen. Yet, despite the fact renewables are the lowest they've ever been, why is the consumer not seeing that back in terms of their energy bills? I think even with water, with energy too, there's a gross incompetence that is widespread, and unfortunately the poorest are paying the price.
I would say part of the reason why is because, since 2010 there were cuts, if you like, in spending on renewables. So had Cameron kept it up, our bills would have been about £150 to £200 lower today than they are, given where our energy mix is. I would also say our lack of, nuclear power as well has been a real problem for us. And I know that's not always comfortable for those of us who sit on the left, if you like, of the spectrum, but it is true, certainly. Our renewables at this point in time can't be the answer to the entire grid. They have too many surges. Our batteries aren't yet good enough. And the final thing, to come back on the windfall tax, usually, like you said, Michelle, you've been a businesswoman before, and that's your primary goal. When you gain a profit, usually it's because of innovation. We use iPhones. I understand why Apple make loads of money, because they innovate, because they work really hard. But for those oil and gas companies today making billions more than they did last year, and even British Gas and Centrica, that's not because they've innovated or done something special.
That's because of market conditions.
But they got kind of like a strike from heaven, right? They got kind of lucky in that sense. So a tax on it now, retrospectively, wouldn't impact kind of investment decisions. It's why we think windfall tax tend to be very, very effective.
Yeah, but I'll tell you for why it makes me a little bit uncomfortable, because you're basically taxing external market conditions as opposed to, like what you're saying, internal innovation. But then what about if I've got shares in BP. I don't mind admitting that. Most people have, by the way. When you look at your pensions, a lot of people, if you've got a pension, you'll see that it is invested in companies like BP and Shell and all the rest of it. But actually, I remember when we were in lockdown, and actually these companies, so many companies actually, had to pretty much give away their oil because actually when you looked at the storage costs, it wasn't worth their while. So when the countries, it wasn't just this country, but when the world basically shut down, these companies really struggled. They made huge losses, and no one then was stepping in and saying, oh, look, market conditions mean that these people pretty much have to give away their oil. Let's all step in and help them. And also, I find it quite interesting that it's oil and gas companies that are being subjected to windfall tax. What about companies like, I don't know, delivery companies, food delivery companies, Amazon, things like that? They've all benefited hugely from everyone being locked in their house. What about pharmaceutical companies that have made absolute fortunes because of so-called external factors? Why don't you want to windfall tax all of them, and where do you draw the line?
So here, I suppose, there's a clear reason why, right? And I suppose in the longer term, our oil and gas companies haven't done that badly. They can definitely take the hit. In terms of specifics around, Amazon, for example, I think we can see the innovation of where they've gotten to, but also we do have kind of reforms to corporation tax. And pharmaceutical companies, yeah, there are real questions about patents and the amount that they are making. Definitely. Those should definitely be addressed. I wouldn't say that, this is a fair and functioning market or a competitive market. As a general rule, I'm in favour of competition in markets. And yes, you're right, of course, people who kind of work and innovate and do well will make their profits. Then also I want them to pay their taxes.
So what's a fair tax then? When we're saying windfall tax and you were in favour of that for oil and gas companies, what's a fair amount? Because they already pay increased corp tax. How much do you think they should be taxed?
Well, the amount at the moment, which Labour has down as the 9 billion, seems fair. You take away the
No,
investment
as a percentage. As a percentage, what percentage tax, windfall tax, do you reckon these companies should be paying?
So maybe at the moment they've got to pay 15% and 20% on top of the corporation tax that they are spending or are they already paying. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would get in enough revenue and also kind of leave them as well. Let's not forget, still being profitable.
And Rishi Sunak's is 25%, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think that ultimately, and I know it's popular, and I know many of you at home will be shouting, saying, what's she on about? Tell her to shut up.
No, I don't.
Because people shout people shout worse things at me on my TV set than shut up. I can tell you, I can't read some of them out sometimes. But yeah, I do. I just think you've got a fine line, really, because you do have to incentivise organisations to keep innovating, especially if everyone keeps banging on about this green agenda and expecting these companies to invest and invest and invest, because there will be a point, actually, if you're a businessman or woman, you're going to sit there and say, hang on, this particular territory, the UK, it's constantly changing its lines with tax strategy. So today I'm going to invest this. Goodness only knows what their tax strategy is going to be tomorrow. And then when you start doing precedents for, and we're going to retrospectively apply that to you, it would make me uneasy if I was an investor. But you tell me, what do you think? I know what you'll all think at home. You'll just be saying, I don't care, just as long as my bills are reduced, quite frankly.
I think that should be the priority, to be honest. Every single penny that we can get, I think, should be spent on making people's lives easier, because from where I'm standing, this is an issue that's been caused by governments and governments all over the world, from shutting down the economy. But even before lockdown, energy prices were steadily rising. Money printing, these are all issues that I don't really feel is the fault of the British people, the vast majority of the British people. I don't understand why we always have to pay the price, you know, to forsake companies that are making billions and billions and billions in profit in an industry that's not actually really that competitive anyway. If it was about competition and I'm a capitalist, I'm all for it, then I would understand. But there's not much competition in the energy industry at all. They're just raking in profit. There's a difference between profit and profiteering, and you don't have to be a socialist and a Labour supporter to be able to understand that and to be able to see when things just clearly aren't fair.
Bernard says, why can't the government just make a law to make the energy companies only charge cost prices with zero profit for 12 months, full stop? Why? I mean, if you're the owner of BP or whoever it is, you're not a charity. Why would you? Why should you not make a profit?
Because energy is a public... I'm not saying they shouldn't make a profit, but energy is a public good, and I'd understand if they were just, you know, just about...
Are you in favour of nationalisation?
No, but not necessarily. I don't think long-term that would be the correct strategy. But I'd understand if they were all just about breaking even. But we're talking about billions and billions and billions in profit that they didn't even expect themselves. This is unexpected profit. Now, taking a few billion...
And they also had unexpected losses as well.
Yeah, but think about it logically. They obviously knew once the economy opened back up again, they're not dumb. They knew that they would make that back tenfold. They took the hit knowing that they would rebound. I mean, so many companies did. I mean, what do you think will happen when you shut down the economy and open back up again with inflation going through the roof? I think it was a given. They knew they'd get that profit back. And I think taking a few billion off them, I don't think they would collapse or never invest in Britain again.
Do you think nationalisation finally is the answer? Jeevan?
I don't think it's the panacea that sometimes we present it as. I think actually you have to look at what makes sense, what ownership model makes sense. But in this case, look, it's clear we're in a crisis. It's clear there's a way to pay for it. It's clear there's a way for the British public to get through. I don't think that, like, you know, sometimes we are tempted to give these 10-word answers, right? The simplistic one. I actually think you have to think about what is the right approach. At this point in time, this is the right approach to get us through.
Yeah, and I think I see this nationalisation phrase, it just gets sprinkled around all the time, because I'm sure some people just think it sounds popular, but when you actually ask them, well, what is it you actually want to nationalise? What? The production of the oil and gas, the transportation, the storage, the supply to the home? People haven't really got a clue. They just want to say nationalise because they go, profit is bad, business is greedy, this is all horrendous, nationalise. But, I mean, come on. I mean, you give me examples of where anything that's been nationalised has been effective and efficient, more effective and efficient than the private sector. I don't know. You tell me. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Right, going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to be giving some of your thoughts, and I've got lots of them. You are emailing in very quickly. Your fingers are typing fast tonight. I like it. Right, when we come back, I want to talk to you about two things. A year on from Afghanistan. Can you even believe that? Should we be giving more money to Afghanistan to help them, yes or no? And also, over 20,000 people have made the Channel crossing now. What a joke. What are we going to do about it? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. We are with you all the way until 7 o'clock. That's another half an hour, you lucky, lucky people, you. Keeping me company, Dominique Samuels and Jeevan. Sandra, we've just been talking about the energy situation. Where do you stand on it? Do you think the Labour policy is the right one, Andrew says? Is our government really just going to stand there and do pretty much nothing about these greedy energy companies? He says more people are going to die from poor nutrition and hypothermia. Shame on all of them. Jim says, I applaud Starmer for his views on the energy prices. I'm getting tired of hearing from the Tories all about how we mustn't tax billionaire businesses too much because they won't invest. We don't need investment, he says. We need reductions in energy costs, and now. Al says, knee-jerk short-term reactions have long-term repercussions. We must generate more power. James says, we should never have a price cap on energy. It's meant to be a free market.
It's not right.
Do you have a limit to that, though? Would you just keep paying and paying and paying? Would you ever support any intervention, James? You tell me. A lot of people are getting very, very, very frightened. I know, because some of you get in touch with me and tell me so. It's not going to be great, is it, this winter? Let's face it. But is Keir Starmer's plan the right one? That's what I've been asking you tonight. Get in touch, GBViews at gbnews.uk, and let me know your thoughts. Now, can you believe this? I know we say time flies, don't we? But really, I cannot believe that it's a year ago today, but it is. What am I talking about? The Taliban, when they took control of Afghanistan. This year, the UK is going to send £286 million in aid to Afghanistan, but the former head of the British Army, Lord Dannatt, is saying we should be giving more. I mean, Dominic, we all remember the absolute carnage, the scenes there, don't we, in Afghanistan? Yeah. I can't believe it's a year ago, but let's not worry about that. Do you think we're doing enough to help, let's face it, a situation that we helped to create in Afghanistan? Should we be doing more? And is that more money, like what Lord Dannatt is saying?
To be honest, I think the talk of even more aid to other countries in the middle of a cost of living crisis just screams to me out of touch, if I'm being quite frank. The first priority should be British citizens here. And I would understand if we weren't giving any money to Afghanistan at all. But this financial year, we've committed about £280 million to Afghanistan. After the recent earthquake that they suffered, we've sent 2.5 million, and many of that goes to NGOs, much of that money. Even in terms of America, we're not the only country that's responsible for sending aid there. Altogether, America have sent about $720 million to Afghanistan. Think about how much money that is. Not to mention, the billions that we've sent to Ukraine collectively as the UK and the US. We're sending a lot of money out of the country. And yes, you can argue that there are some strategic benefits to that and humanitarian benefits to that. I completely agree. But I think we should stick with what we've agreed to send to Afghanistan this financial year and focus on how we can make the lives of people at home easier first, because it ain't no holiday or party here, let's just be honest.
But when you see the images, we've all been seeing them over this last day or so, you've got all of these tiny little babies, 3 to a little cot, you've got very sick children not getting the care that they need. Does that not kind of motivate you? And you look at that and you go, oh God, no, OK, let's help more.
Yeah, no, it's easy to want to help every single person that suffers in the world, and children as well. Those images are extremely harrowing, but, there's children here that are living on the streets, there's children here that are being beaten, abused and tortured by their parents, there's children here that are starving. You may not see them, but they exist, and they should be our first priority, and I'll always stick to that.
So charity begins at home.
Yes,
I think I can summarise there what Dominique's saying. Jeevan, where do you stand?
Let's do both. Let's ensure that...
Hang on, have you got a massive field with magic money trees, parks in them?
This isn't a magic money tree situation. For example, the universal credit, we could absolutely afforded the uplift. We had extra 20 billion than we were expecting at our last budget. We could have also increased the universal credit in line with prices. We absolutely could feed people at home. That's not a decision this government has made. In terms of the 286 million, that is 0.01% of our economy. So what, 1/100th of a penny out of every pound that we spend? It's certainly not a huge amount of money we're spending when you look at the portion of the UK economy. And as you said, about 20 million people there facing starvation and hunger. We're looking at over 60% of the country facing hunger. Those people don't even have medicines to get through. Sometimes in life, I think we'd all agree we try and ensure we live in a world where no one goes hungry. I agree that no one in this country should go hungry, but also do what we can abroad as well.
Do you have any limits? Is it just like a bottomless pit? We just give? Like, what's the level?
It's not a bottomless pit, no. I think we should do more. I think we should try and ensure. So we should actually get back to at least 0.7% of the GDP target and also channel it where we can. Now,
so you're talking about, just in case people are not knowing what we're talking about, you're talking about foreign aid per se. It was 0.7, it got reduced to 0.5. That's what, when you're saying put it back up, you're saying foreign aid generally should be restored to the 0.7%.
0.7%.
Not right now.
Restore about the 0.7% target. And I'd say, actually, yes, of course, in this situation, do send more humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. And when people abroad go hungry, when they become desperate, we will see them turning to activities that do hit us at home. Instability abroad does fuel violence, it does fuel conflict. And as we've seen, that does spill over borders. It does cause huge issues for us as well.
But aren't you a little bit worried? I mean, some of these countries, let's face it, the Taliban, they're run by the Taliban, who... they're not the best. You're not going to hold them up and say, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to have a collective running a country, I present you the Taliban. You're not going to put them on a pedestal as being the best, are you? So aren't you a bit worried? You're going to be giving all this money to very corrupt regimes. Does that not worry you?
So I think in this case, the humanitarian aid would be in the form of food and medicines. There'd be no question at all of sending cash abroad to the Taliban. Now, sometimes you do have, if you like, less worse options. It'd be great if there was a stable, functioning government that had the interests of its citizenry at heart. I would love that to be the case. That isn't the case. Sometimes in life you have bad options and you have even worse options. This situation where actually, yes, you are sending that humanitarian aid is the least worst option we have. I accept the fact that, the Taliban could use that in ways that wouldn't necessarily the way we would like. But I definitely don't want to see children die in hospitals from treatable diseases. I don't want to see them die from hunger either. It's a difficult place to be. And look, I worked in Somaliland for 2 years. Somalia, of course, next door, a country which also does not have a functioning government. Again, they were stuck, with very least worst options. It was very difficult.
Yeah, Dominique?
I'd love to help the rest of the world, but right now we're not in a position to. And it's not like we're the only country that's responsible for sending aid to Afghanistan. Many other
but we're one of the primary countries. Sorry, companies. Yeah, I'm a UK PLC. No, but we are one of the primary countries responsible for the situation, many would say, that's in Afghanistan. So you want to stick your nose into countries' business.
When people say we, who do you mean? And they're not talking about Joe down the street who works his backside off to provide for his family. We're talking about politicians that like to meddle in the affairs of other countries in the name of freedom fighting. Yes, I accept that. We're not talking about the people that need to be prioritised here at home. So when we talk about collective responsibility, many people that are sat at home and are going to be thinking, what? I had no involvement in this. I didn't ask for you to go into those countries, so why do I have to pay the price?
Yeah, and Jeevan, you're saying as well, in terms of let's restore the spend, the target to 0.7%. I think having a target of what you were enshrined, this is enshrined in law, it's not like a best endeavours. Having a spend target enshrined in law is one of the most ridiculous things I think I can even imagine this country having. I don't know why we've got it. I think that we should get rid of that enshrinement in law almost immediately. If I was Prime Minister, that's one of the things that I would do. Because if you give people a spend target, you are literally saying to them, it is the law that you have to spend this money. People don't spend it effectively. They don't spend it efficiently. They don't pay attention to what I would call like a KPI. What impact are you actually having? They sit there and they go, oh my God. Dawn in accounts sits there and goes, oh, the year end's almost up. I haven't spent this amount of money. That's a project. That'll do, yeah. It's 5 million there, 2 million there. It's just so you can tick a box and say, I hit my target. I find it preposterous.
DFID has had a very rigorous impact evaluation for many, many years. In terms of the benefit that aid has done over the past kind of 15 to 20 years, hundreds of millions of children being vaccinated, millions more being educated across the globe. Now, those children who do well then grow up to be more kind of productive adults. They produce more for the global economy. And those things spill over to us as well. A world in which there's investments in the future as well. A child today who doesn't catch a dangerous disease, who isn't suffering from starvation, learns more in school, in the future helps that nation develop, in the future somewhere for us to trade for as well.
Yeah, we'll give aid. I've got no problem giving aid. What I'm pushing back against is the absolute absurdity of having the spend enshrined in law, because that creates waste. It creates a ridiculous panic when you get to budget end to just throw this money out the door. So I'm not saying don't give aid. I'm just saying get rid of the enshrinement in law. Sorry, Dominique, you wanted to...
Yeah, no, I think in specific reference to Afghanistan, collectively as a global community, we've sent billions to this country without really much to show for it. Much of that money was swallowed up by the government that obviously eventually collapsed and was replaced by the Taliban. In reference to Afghanistan particularly, I'm not really seeing much good that the aid has actually done. So for people to then be screaming for more aid, especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis, doesn't really stack up to me.
I would say that I think actually, to be fair, aid is not this panacea that helps nations develop. It's not something like, for example, where you give a nation a set amount of money and then you say, hey, guess what, development is now going to happen. That's certainly true. Like, it takes a lot more. It takes political stability in those nations. You have to be careful about who you're giving the money to, that you're not simply funding kind of political leaders who therefore don't have to tax their own population, aren't responsible or accountable to them. There is a distinction between that and also the humanitarian suffering we're seeing today. So I would say send that humanitarian aid, but also, yes, you do have to be careful about where aid goes. And I would agree with you very much, Michelle, be absolutely very, very rigorous.
Yeah, but, you know, when it comes to aid, I just think it gets sprinkled around like confetti, almost to make ourselves feel better as a country. One of the things that I always say, and people will get very angry with me for daring to have the audacity to bring it up, Ukraine. It's regarded on the Transparency Index as the second most corrupt country in Europe. And we're sending billions upon billions upon billions under the situation of it being a war. And I sit there and I think, is anyone actually doing any kind of audit trail here to
where it's
actually
going.
make sure that rather than just shoving billions of pounds over the fence, is anyone actually looking at where are we spending it? Is it effective? Is it efficient? Are there proper audit trails on this money? Should we even be concerned about this? Because I've got to be honest, no one really seems to be. I am, but then I'll get shouted down by all of you guys at home. I am waiting for it. I'm poised, I'm ready. You're right, going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about the fact that 20,000, that figure, has been surpassed now, numbers of people crossing the channel. I mean, what on earth are we going to do about it? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. Welcome back to Dewbs and Co. With me, Michelle, I just told you my name, haven't I? And the clue is, of course, in the title of the show. Jeevan Sander keeping me company, and Dominique Samuels, or Donna.
Donna.
As one of my viewers have just written in.
That's my favourite.
Yeah, said that they love Donna on the panel tonight. And I'm trying to work out who you mean. I think you mean Dominique. Talking a lot of sense, someone else says that, Dominique, you should be PM. That's what
wow.
they want for you, yes. Any ambitions to go into politics?
Maybe, yeah, but being PM sounds like the job from hell, to be honest. Everyone ends up hating you.
Can you imagine? There you go. Dominique Samuels could well be a future PM. Stranger things have happened, haven't they?
Indeed.
Stephen, yes. Anyway, right, Brian says, you've just been talking about Afghanistan. If you were there, you two ladies would not be on TV discussing this. I suspect you're right there. Yes, this is a good point. Many people are saying, agreeing with you, Donna. I nearly called you Donna then as well. Are we drunk
Do
tonight?
you
What's
look
going
like
on?
a Donna?
Me and my viewers, we might have been on the shandy, I think. But many people are agreeing with you, actually, with that sentiment. Charity begins at home. That is coming through thick and fast on my email tonight, I've got to say. Right then, let's talk about what's going on in the channel, shall we? I mean, come on now. We've been talking about this for weeks, months. I'm just going to be blunt about it. No one's doing anything. I'm supposed to be reading out this nice professional intro to this story, but it's just getting ridiculous now, isn't it? This year, it's past 20,000 people. That is double the number at this time last year. I mean, Jeevan, what we're going to do. Do you agree that something has to be done?
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't want to see people dying in the Channel. I don't think anyone on this panel wants to see people dying in the Channel. But we know why people are making this crossing, right? They're making this crossing because there are no safe and legal routes. You can't apply for asylum in this country from outside the United Kingdom. The only one scenario you can do is if you're a child across the border and you have parents here. If the flip side is the case, your child is there, but you're a parent on the other side, you can't make an application to cross. Those people in those boats, of course, many from Afghanistan. What we've seen is 70% of them, Iran, Iraq, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. 60% are successful when they land and more successful on appeal, so it's over 70%. We need safe and legal routes. This plan has not worked. You need to have an asylum application processing centre in France, assess who kind of does have a right of asylum in this country and do so. But until we get that, unfortunately, yes, this is going to continue.
I think much of the reason, and there was a report done on this, much of the reason why also so many people are also accepted is because the data that they use to obviously fill out their application, much of it isn't actually independently reviewed and verified. In some cases, migrants that come over from the Channel have to actually put in their details, things like where they've come from, their age, their name, themselves. None of that is verified because of the absolutely terrible infrastructure we have to deal with the scale of people that are actually coming. I would agree something needs to be done, but the idea that all of these people are coming from war-torn countries and they just need somewhere to live, I don't think really stacks up when you actually look at the people that are coming and some recent stats that have come out. Between June and July, nearly 40% of those that came from across the Channel were from Albania, for example. That we have noticed there have been an uptick in people from Albania, obviously taking advantage of the situation and the fact that, you know, it's basically a free-for-all here. There's not been a conflict in Albania for a quarter century, so clearly they're not fleeing war, they're not fleeing deprivation, these are economic migrants. In reference to the solution that's been proposed, Rwanda, I think, let's just be honest here, it's a failed policy. It's failed. Hardly anyone has been sent to Rwanda, if that. Rwanda came out a few months ago saying that they'll only be able to take about 200. It's a failed policy, and David Davis wrote a really interesting piece recently in The Telegraph about employing one of two methods that the Australians used, which was actually turning the boats back, employing some of the technology that the Europeans used to survey people coming in from North Africa to Europe, using that technology to notify the French. If they don't do something about it, turn the boats back before it's too late, before they reach our shores. I think that is a solution that would actually stop the numbers of people coming, because let's not forget, you know, we spend about £4.7 million a day accommodating these migrants.
Oh, I reckon it'll be a lot more than that, because
yeah, a lot more now.
That figure was from much earlier on in the year. Jeevan, what do you think to some of what Dominique is saying?
Well, look, the David Davis plan, I mean, I'm very sceptical of what David Davis has to say. I mean, David Davis has been consistently wrong about so many things. You know, when he was saying, probably on Brexit, he said there'll be no downsides, only upsides. Of course, I think at least the queues at Dover would say there were definitely some downsides.
But hang on,
he said
you're making it about him. So let's not make it about him. Let's make it about the premise of what he said, which, by the way, I think is a very sensible suggestion indeed. What he was basically saying is we'll take the second strand of the Operation Sovereign Borders in Australia, and essentially we'll use technology, as Dominic was saying, we'll alert the French, look, there's a boat about to leave your shores, give them the opportunity to do it, to stop it. If they don't do it, what we will do then is essentially tow these boats back to France. What's wrong with that? I think it's a great idea.
So why should it also be, for example, when it comes to refugee and asylum application, France already receives 3 times as many as we do. People who tend to cross into this country, and I do disagree with those statistics that I've said before, people who do cross tend to have family links here. You know, one Syrian man that plane to Rwanda, for example, had 2 sisters inside this country, and that's why he was trying to cross on a boat. The young woman who sadly died, of course, had a fiancé here as well. There has to be some kind of route, a legal route to asylum.
I'm not surprised people are saying that they've got family here. If you've got 20 20,000 people coming this year alone. Of course, people are going to have family because last month another X came, and last month another X came. So at this rate, everyone's going to have family.
But there's
surely.
not, again, we are receiving far fewer asylum applications than France do. 86% of refugees stay in the neighbouring countries. They don't come all the way to United Kingdom. It's not like we are not exactly a welcoming environment. We've already had the hostile environment. We've had the Windrush scandal. People don't come here because Britain is a soft touch. They come here because, and they risk their lives to come here because they have family, because they have connections.
The level of people coming here, arriving here, these are record numbers. These are numbers not seen before. Bring up the statistic again about Albania. You can't say that part of why people are coming from Albania isn't because they're starting to see that it's really quite easy to get here. They're basically escorted into the country, allowed to put in all their own data. Some of the time, they're not even identified properly, with some of them actually absconding from the hotels in this country. We don't even know who they are. I think we are a bit of a soft touch, no?
I don't think we are a soft touch at all. I think we've seen that traditionally. And also, you know, Home Office tribunals, for example, I mean, first and foremost, if you could simply put in your own data and get kind of a pass, then it would be a 100% success rate, not a 60% success rate. More broadly as well, when you have a process and a system to assess asylum applications, or the same as I've seen as well, disability benefits, people often say, well, the result is wrong. But actually, that's the reason why you have a process to assess that particular application, whatever it is for. I think actually we have to do this, have to get a grip on it. But I think all of these solutions that we've seen so far, trying to turn back the boats, at one point Priti Patel said she'll push them back, these things have not worked.
No, it's not been tried. They've not been tried. They've not tried pushbacks. All this talk about Rwanda, you say that the policies failed. But do you know what I would do? And I do accept that it's a good job I'm not in charge, quite frankly. But do you know what I would do? I would stand up. I would say, guys, right, look, this has now reached the point of no return. This is ridiculous. You've now got, what, 20-odd thousand this year alone. It has to stop. I would say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see through my Rwanda plan, and I would put people on a plane and I would send them to Rwanda, and I would say to the country, guys, I understand there's going to be ramifications, etc., but we have to try and do something. We have to try and do something to deter these crossings. Nothing's working. Nothing's been done. All of these courts and all of these lawyers, everyone's kind of getting involved and probably making a small fortune off the back of it as well, by the way. So somebody's just got to be bold, show some leadership, accept that there will be some consequences, because if people really are, like what you're saying, Jeevan, desperate to stop people risking their lives, then I'm sorry, you've got to take action, and there might be consequences to that action, and you'll have to face those.
So I think even if you were to send the 200 abroad, I don't think it's going to stop people crossing the channel. And also, like, let's stand up for the rule of law and for courts as well. Like, there's a reason those laws protect everybody. Everybody has to abide by the rule, including the government. The government is to ride roughshod. You know, part of what makes this country great is the fact that we have the rule of law, the fact that governments can't arbitrarily say what is and is not legal. You know, that's the kind of place that
you're at crisis point now, aren't you? Because you cannot, it's not sustainable. It's the infrastructure can't cope with it. You know, we're spending millions of pounds per day. It's not sustainable. So radical action needs to be occurring, surely.
Well, our laws are manipulated. The system is gamed. A lot of the reason why people that are here illegally fail to be deported is because they game the system. They use, for example, the UN Refugee Convention, the European Court of Human Rights, a lot of the conventions with that. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, these aren't integral and useful, but I'm saying that I do think with modern context, because the context of a lot of these laws were in reference to, for example, World War II, I think that it needs to be updated. Rishi Sunak said that he would change the definition of asylum seeker to sort of fit the trends that we're seeing at the moment. Do you think the system needs updating? But it's not just about turning back the boats, etc., etc. It's also about, you know, what we have on the ground at the moment. You know, our border force, it isn't fit for purpose. The funding's been patchy. Staff don't really know what they're doing. The whole thing just needs reform.
Well, there you go. Ted has got the answer. Ted, he says, Michelle, if we really want to stop immigration, we just have to come out of the European Court of Human Rights. It is that simple. Well, there you go. That's Ted's views. David says, I want to know Labour's plans for boat crossings. Do they have one?
Nope.
Don't know. I don't think so. If they have, I haven't seen it. If you've seen it, let me know. That is all we have got time for. Thank you very much for your company tonight and your thoughts on those topics, Jeevan, Dominique, Donna. Thank you very much for your company. Have yourself a wonderful evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Up next is Nigel Farage. Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening. Well, at last, we waited a bit for it, didn't we? But a big idea from Sir Keir Starmer, yes, to cap energy prices and the government to pay the difference. It seems, early doors, that lots of Conservative voters rather like the idea. So, at last, has Keir Starmer got something right? We'll debate that and much, much more. But first, let's get the all-important weather.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here with your latest forecast from the Met Office. Further rain or thunderstorms during the next 24 hours in many places, but not for all. These showers will be hit and miss. However, the trend is clear. We've replaced high pressure with low pressure. That's bringing a change in the weather. It's brought a lot of cloud. It's bringing some rain and thunderstorms, and it will also mark a change to cooler conditions for all of us over the next few days. Now, the rain that we've seen across central and eastern Scotland, that continues overnight, some moderate to heavy rain, particularly in the east of Scotland. Drier for many elsewhere, but further showers make an appearance by the end of the night into the southwest as well as South Wales. Again, these could be heavy and thundery, but they'll be hit and miss. And what will remain the case over the next couple of days is that some places will stay dry, but others will be hit by some intense rain as thunderstorms develop. And the main focus for thunderstorms, I think, on Tuesday afternoon will be northern England into parts of the Midlands, south and southwest England, as well as Wales. Drying up for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Brighter here, but feeling fresh with a northerly breeze. It's still quite humid in the south and southeast, 25 to 27 Celsius.